Greetings everyone! Welcome to this new lecture of our Bulletin of Near Eastern Excavations and Research. If you attended the past lectures, you know that I am Valentina Santini and I will moderate this encounter. On the contrary, if you have missed the previous lecture and if you want to watch them, or if you desire to re-watch them, you can find them here on YouTube on our channel, therefore on the CAMNES channel. The aim of the bulletin is to inform scholars, but also university students and the wider public as well, about current archaeological excavations and projects in the Near East. At the end of each lecture, since we are live, there's a section dedicated to you, to our public, and to your questions. Therefore, if you have questions, if you want to comment on the topic of this lecture, you can write your considerations in the live chat, which is here on this page, on this YouTube page next to the video. And at the end of the lecture, I'm going to read these questions or these comments to our speakers. So now I would like to introduce our speakers for today, who will discuss Hatra Statuary Salvage Project, cataloging and reassembling statues from Hatra at the Iraq Museum, Baghdad, E.Foietta from the University of Turin, and I.Bucci from the Birkbeck College, University of London. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valentina, for your kind invitation. Now, here we are. Okay. First of all, I would like to thank the CAMNES and especially Stefano Valentini and Valentina Santini for their constant help during the last years, for their support in logistics and relationships with international institutions. They have trust in our project also before the sign of agreements and for the CAMNES invitation to participate to this cycle of conference of BuNEER. I would like also to thank Professoressa Roberta Ricciardi-venco, who is the main director of the project HaSSP, Hatra Salvage Statuary Project, which will be explained in detail this afternoon. And to conclude, I would like to thank my colleague I.Bucci for the work and many hours spent together on these fascinating works. The first part of our presentation will be focused on a quick overview of Atra, UNESCO site since 1995, the history of the researches conducted there, and the recent destruction accomplished by ISIS Daesh at the site during 2015. Then Ilaria will explain you the project about the statuary of Hatra at the Iraq Museum, Baghdad, in detail, conducted there during January 2020. So let's start our travel. The ancient city of Hatra is located 80 kilometers to the southwest of the modern center of Mosul in the Iraqi Jazeera. The center touched its apogee during the 2nd and 3rd century AD, reaching the striking extension of 300 hectares. During this period, the city was delimited by a double curtain wall of subcircular shape, and the main districts of the city were defined by irregular layout streets. Inside the districts, different Iraqi and foreign expeditions unearthed 14 small shrines, several monumental tombs, houses, and palaces. From the 2nd century AD, the temples and the huge central temenos of about 15 hectares were monumentalized and rebuilt entirely in stone, attesting also the main religious purpose of the city, which is named on the legend of its coins, the enclosure of Shamash, the sun god. During the same period, the city became the capital of an important buffer state located between the Parthian and the Roman empires. Hatra was always allied with the Parthians against the Romans, The emperors Trajan in 114 AD and Septimius Severus twice in 198 and 199 AD tried to conquer the city without success. After the falling of the Parthian Empire 226 AD, the new enemy of Hatra became the Sasanian dynasty, which rapidly conquered the territory of the Parthians. Atra became allied with the Romans, as attested by 3 inscriptions in Latin discovered in the small shrine 9. The curtain walls fell only in 240-41 AD after a long siege conducted by the Sasanian army. The city after that date was definitely abandoned, as reported also by the later author Ammianus Marcellinus. During the Islamic period, the site was lightly occupied as rest point by the Atabeg of Mosul, who engraved 2 inscriptions on the Great Iwan's facade. The Occidental explorers reporting their adventurous travels came to Atra for the first time during the 19th century. John Ross was the first Occidental traveler who reached the city. He visited Hatra 2 times in 1838 and 1839 for a few hours, publishing a general plan of the city with some important sketches of the Great Iwan and Twin Iwan complex, whose ruins were still imposing. In 1840, an expedition composed by Mitford, Layard, Rassam, and Ainsworth visited Hatra. They produced the first sketches of sculptures and architectural decoration preserved at the site. Layard drew also a plan of the temenos, identifying the main important fabrics of the area: the Great Iwans, the Square Temple, the Twin Iwans, the Triad Temple, the Bouleuterion, the Temple of Samia, the Temple of Shahiru, and the Temple of Allat. Charles Jacquerel and Charles Fosset, 2 French explorers, saw in different moments Hatra at the end of the 19th century. The latter one wrote a brief report of his campaign to the French Ministry of Culture, preserved now at the National Archive of France. He is the first archaeologist to open trenches on the field, and the first one who took photographs of the ruins. At the beginning of the 20th century, Walter Andre, director of the expedition of Assur of the Deutsche Orientgesellschaft, and his team documented in detail the ruins of Hatra and its close landscape. A large amount of information was published in the fundamental volumes edited in 1908 and 1912, comprehending survey, architectural data, and numerous plans, sketches, and views of the main structures. Gertrude Bell, the famous English explorer and archaeologist, visited Hatra twice in 1911 and 1922. She describes her visit in the diary and a letter to her father. Bell's documentation is important mainly for the pictures preserved and digitalized thanks to the Gertrude Bell archive of Newcastle University, focusing on the temenos fabrics, sculptures, and architectural decoration. From the second half of the 50s onward, the Iraqi expedition began its constant work at Atra under the supervision of the Iraqi Directorate of Antiquities. Many important Iraqi archaeologists worked at Atra as directors: Fuad Safar, Mohammed Ali Mustafa, Watik al-Saliki, Jabir Ibrahim, and Hikma Bashir al-Aswad. The Iraqi archaeological campaigns regarded the excavation and clearance of the Temenos area, 14 small shrines, domestic and palatial buildings, funerary buildings, and fortifications. The Polish expedition worked at Atra for only 1 year, 1990, unearthing a part of the main fortification and an ancient curtain wall discovered in the settled area. From 1986 until now, the site has been constantly investigated by the Missione Archeologica Italiana Atra, directed by Roberta Ricciardi-Venco, Università di Torino, Centro Scavi di Torino, and CAMNES. During more than 20 years of work at the site, the expedition has produced a rich documentation concerning topography, architecture, statuary, architectural decoration, and findings. Extended excavations were carried on at Building A, an important domestic complex located close to the Temenos area, while several deep trenches were opened by members of the expedition in the Temenos area in order to understand the first phases of the city. During the last 100 years, the State Board of Antiquities, local and international archaeologists, restorers, international organizations have worked constantly to preserve Atra's heritage and create an almost complete documentation of buildings, landscape, and findings. During 2014 and the beginning of 2015, the Islamic State, ISIS Daesh, conquered progressively territories in Syria and Iraq, choosing Mosul as one of the capital of the Islamic State together with Raqqa. In February 2015, the Mosul Museum was attacked harshly by ISIS fighters who smashed with sledgehammer sculptures, reliefs, and artifacts from the most ancient period of Mesopotamia until the Islamic period and preserved there since many years. The video was published by media propaganda of the Islamic State on YouTube and social networks, producing the strong answer and indignation of the local and international community. Many statues of kings, lords, cavalrymen, nobles, gods, and goddesses discovered at Hatra were partially or totally destroyed and their fragments laid on the museum floors for months, an inestimable loss for the world heritage. Only few of the sculptures were calques, as wrongly suggested during later days by some scholars, media, and newspapers. At Mosul was stored the second numerous group of sculptures discovered at Hatra, signifying an incredible loss for the comprehension of the city, its customs, and the Iraqi and world heritage. Several assessments of the damages have been produced by the SBAH, scholar organizations, and group of researchers. A detailed report, for instance, has been delivered rapidly by the site Gates of Nineveh and Rashid International Organization. From January 2020, the museum has been partially reopened to show some contemporary art objects. And in the next month, also thank you to other international collaboration, other exposition and restoration will be scheduled. In March 2015, Iraq's Tourism and Antiquities Ministry affirmed also that part of Hatra site was bulldozed, even if satellite and aerial image did not testify the spread destruction as in other archaeological sites in Syria and Iraq. In April 2015, Atra was looted and sacked by militias of ISIS Daesh, as reported in a cruel video published on YouTube, where the architectural decoration and masks were shot with assault rifles, and some of them hit with sledgehammers. The same sort concerned life-size statues of nobles and kings preserved inside the Temenos area. The condemnation of the local and international community, UNESCO and World Monument Fund, also in this case was strong. The liberation of Hatra from the ISIS troops after 3 years of occupation happened in April 2017. During the fighting with the ISIS troops, which lasted for several weeks, destruction made by fire involved the Triad Temple in the Temenos area, as suggested by some satellite images. From 2020, a project of Ismeo, directed by Massimo Vidale, University of Padova, funded by Alif Foundation, has as main purpose of furnishing a detailed assessment of the last damages for scheduling restore intervention and at the site, and a new documentation with the use of drones and new technologies. The HaSSP project, Hatra Salvage Statuary Project, start from the idea that after the looting and destruction of the sculpture at the Mosul Museum and at the site, a new modern documentation of Hatra statues preserved in the Iraqi museums, and especially in the Iraq Museum of Baghdad, must be considered a priority. The project starts thanks to the kind collaboration and permission of different institutions: the State Board of Antiquities and Heritage, the Iraq Museum of Baghdad, and CAMNES. Its importance is related to the fact that the corpus of Hatra statues is the most important and numerous for the Parthian period, and also for the lack of study on them, given the main catalogue of Hatra statues is still the publication of Staffar and Mustafa, edited in 1974. Ilaria will explain you in detail our work in the halls and storerooms of the Iraq Museum of Baghdad, which is still in progress. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Enrico, for your presentation, and before that for your beautiful introduction, actually. And I would just like to take the chance to thank myself, the CAMNES, for inviting us today, and Valentina Santini for organizing, coordinating, and chairing this session. So, as already Enrico told you, the corpus of Hatra stone statuary is the most extensive and representative for the art of the Parthian period. The assemblage is preserved mainly in the Iraq Museum of Baghdad, while a much fewer number of items are exhibited or stored in the local museums of other cities in Iraq, such as, for instance, the museum in Mosul and Sulaymaniyah. The statues depict a wide variety of subjects, including kings, nobles, priests, gods, and goddesses, that greatly help us to reconstruct the complexity of the social, cultural, and religious world of Hatra, especially in the 2nd-3rd century CE. Moreover, the broad range of models and iconographies they reveal makes a fundamental contribution to the contextualization of the Hatran artistic milieu in the midst of Mesopotamian, Arab, Iranian, and Greco-Roman traditions and cross-cultural influences. This is therefore a particularly rich and important heritage which needs to be protected and promoted, as already Enrico told you. Now even more if we consider the destruction perpetrated in 2015 at the Mosul Museum at the site itself. Just to give you a bit of a context about the genesis of the project, it must be said that the catalogue and study of Hatra statuary actually started already in 2004, after the outbreak of the Iraq War, when the Iraq Museum was unfortunately looted and its contents and archives severely damaged. At the time, the member of the Centro Ricerche Archeologiche e Scavi di Torino per il Medio Oriente e l'Asia went to Baghdad to cooperate with the Iraqi authorities towards the reopening of the museum. For 2 months, the Italian researchers, led by Roberta Venco Ricciardi, worked together with their Iraqi colleagues, documenting the stone sculptures from Hatra, mainly preserved in the storerooms. A first database was then created, and a copy of the documentation was, of course, delivered, mainly consisting of forms and photographs, to the State Board of Antiquities and Heritage. The same year, the Italian government worked in cooperation with the SBA to open a new fully functional restoration laboratory, and several statues from Hatra were chosen for the training activities of the new staff of restorers. In summer 2013, a campaign to continue the catalogue of Hatra Statuary in the museum was carried out, and all of the sculptures in the exhibition halls were photographed and accurately documented. Moreover, in the course of some meetings with the Director General of the Iraqi Museums, it was agreed to start the procedures to establish a cooperation with the Iraqi Museum for the documentation, storage, preservation, and exhibition of Hatra Statuary. Unfortunately, the project could not be implemented at the time due to financial restrictions. But preparations were actually later resumed in 2017, when a survey of both the museum galleries that displayed some new exhibition arrangements and of the storeroom was accomplished, confirming that fragments belonging to the same statue were often stored in different locations in the museum due to the limited storing space, and that many pieces required restoration. This engagement continued, and after a preliminary reorganization of the Atra's collections in the storerooms of the museum and the disposal of dedicated metallic shelves in October 2019, the first season of the Hatra Statuary Salvage Project took place between December 2019 and January 2020. The project is conceived as an on-the-job training and capacity building for the staff of the Iraq Museum in cataloging and storing procedures. The main purpose is to create a comprehensive database of both the complete statues and the fragments that will be fundamental for their management, conservation, and protection. Together with the new photographic documentation, the classification of the items in the database will allow to register and map the statues and the fragments in the museum, assess their state of preservation, and indicate which need restoration, identify fragments from the same sculptures that could be joined and restored, plan future permanent and temporary exhibitions, and make Atra's antiquities more accessible for study purposes. In order to achieve a thorough assessment of the materials, it will also be necessary to review the old Iraqi archives, starting from the excavation registers. So to understand, which is not an easy task actually, to understand what is kept in Baghdad and what is exhibited or stored in other provincial museums or still at the site itself. A catalogue of the statuary will be published at the end of the project, and the organization and participation to international events such as conferences and seminars will be also scheduled to spread the results and make the museum collections more accessible to the scholars and to the general public. The first season of the HaSSP project, promoted by CAMNES in partnership with the Iraq Museum and the State Board of Antiquities and Heritage, took place between, as we said, December 2019 and January 2020, for the duration of about 2 weeks. The campaign was actually supposed to last about 30 days, but unfortunately, due to the instability of the political situation in Baghdad, already precarious, but after the killing of the Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, our embassy urged us to leave the country as soon as possible. The team included several Italian and Iraqi members from different institutions. Roberta-Venco Ricciardi, the director of the project, is a former professor of Parthian and Sasanian archaeology at the University of Turin and the director of the Missione Archeologica Italiana Atra since 1986. She has a long-standing experience in excavation in Atra, in Iraq and at Hatra in particular, and participated and directed several research, training, and conservation projects. Alessandra Peruzzetto, member of the Missione Archeologica Italiana, joined the World Monument Fund in 2006, where she coordinates a wide range of activities from conservation to capacity building and site management, particularly focused on the ancient world and the Middle East. She was not physically with us during the expedition, actually, but she's the one responsible for the relations with the Iraq Museum and the SBA offices, and actually is kind of her work behind the scenes that made also the agreement possible, actually. And of course, for the Italian part, there were me and Enrico. As for our Iraqi colleagues, I would like to particularly thank Tamir Rejab, the restorer that was assigned to coordinate the local team. He actually had already worked with Professor Venco Ricciardi in 2004 and 2013, and is an expert, we can say now, on Atra's antiquities in general. And also, I would like also to thank the other members of the team, and who were Ansan Ahmad Salih, Ahmad Abdul Rida, Tahi Ahmad, Radwan Hussein, and Najem Abdul Hussein. It was a pleasure to work with them. And a special thank also goes to the engineer Alal Al-Mbaki, a long-standing collaborator of the Iraq Museum for both local and international projects. Again, he was not exactly a member of the archaeological team, but he helped us immensely in coordinating all of the activities in the museums. And he and his family actually made our stay in Baghdad truly lovely. So how did we proceed, and what the result of this first season? For the first season, we decided to start from the storerooms, as the catalogue of the sculptures in the exhibition halls had already been completed between 2013 and 2019. I'm sorry, I mean, you are seeing, looking at two pictures of me and Professor Venco working to adjust the statues for the photographs. We couldn't take pictures of the storerooms themselves. We were not allowed to, but this is just to give you an idea of our common work environment at the time. So thanks to the collaboration with the staff of the Iraq Museum and the SBAB, we were able to locate almost all of the artifacts from Hatra in the different sectors of the storerooms, and they are now being transferred into a single room to facilitate their conservation and study in the future. Our activity focused mainly on the numerous heads that had already been collected in storeroom number 2, the one we're working in the pictures, and needed more attention as they are still largely unpublished and little known to the scholarly community. Some of them were clearly part of an original architectural decoration as part of the block out of which they were carved is still clearly visible on the rear side, while many others probably belong to freestanding statues. During the season, 107 sculptures, mostly head of statues, around the heads were 104, were catalogued in a new database. Microsoft Office Access has been chosen for several reasons, as it was suitable for our research purposes, thanks to the possibility to work with tables linked at different hierarchical and topographical levels, to attach images and include hyperlinks, to use value lists from a controlled vocabulary, and to interrogate the dataset by creating complex queries. This also, let's say, relatively open, being part of the Microsoft Office suite of programs. And most importantly, it also allows to export contents in both Excel and XML formats. As you can see, the forms incorporate information regarding inventory numbers, measures, material, photographs, features, and archaeological context of the objects, bibliography, their current placement in the museum, as well as an assessment of their conservation and, when necessary, recommendations for restoration. All inventory numbers were registered when possible. They include a new ASP ID, an inventory number assigned in 2004 and used at the time both in the database and in the labeling of the photograph, the museum inventory, and an expedition inventory assigned during the excavations, which appear on the statues and fragments, and was also used in the main work on Atra, written by Fuad Safar and Mohamed Ali Mustafa in 1974, the one that Enrico already mentioned. And this may appear something quite irrelevant, but actually it isn't. It's like this juggling these numbers. We do have so now we do have basically 4 IDs, which may seem insane, but is absolutely necessary to start to trace back all of the fragments actually in the museum. And it's very important actually to register also the partial numbers or the expedition numbers that could actually help us very much in the moment when we will go through the Iraqi archives. This catalogue phase is fundamental in the perspective of assisting the museum staff in the management and preservation of Hatra Statuary collection. One of the main aims of the project was also to produce a new photographic documentation for the antiquities in the museum. Each sculpture was therefore accurately documented with photographs, and for some of the most significant items, more pictures were taken in order to obtain an accurate 3D model with photoscan in the Agisoft Metashape version, allowing a better documentation and precise measuring of the statues. And now we kind of come to the juicy part. This is just the following slides are just to give you an idea of what we were dealing with and what are the kind of the results, I mean, the kind of evidence that we were cataloging. So this slide is all about, let's say, lords and kings. You can see 3 of the heads that we cataloged and classified during the first season, and on the right, 3 of the statues. The first one, unfortunately, was actually in the video that Enrico showed you, and the other 2 are now safe and sound, I would say, in the halls of the Iraq Museum. So we actually found at least 8 heads belonging to king statues, and for 2 of them, a 3D photogrammetry model was also created. Many statues depicting Hatra sovereigns were discovered during the Iraqi archaeological investigations at the site. Identified in the Aramaic inscription by the title of Maria, Lord, and later by the title of Malka, King, the governors of the city are recognizable from the presence of a diadem, often decorated by an eagle with spread wings, and in the later period, from a high tiara-like headdress that you can see here and here, also adorned usually by an eagle, and often by astral symbols on its sides. In many instances, they show a peculiar hairstyle featuring 1 or 3 bunches made of curls. In this case, 1, of course, in this tree, and there are other examples of this kind of hairstyles. And the most kind of peculiar are the sculptures of Nasru and of Sanatruk I. The clothes are also usually very elaborate, with embroideries and applied metallic elements and belts with figurative decorations. Statues of lords and kings were found mainly inside the Great Temenos, but also in the small sanctuaries throughout the town and at the city gates. A very large group, actually, also of statues and hats was related to religion somehow. We know that Hatra is famous for its monumental sanctuary dedicated to the sun god. It seemed, in fact, that the city itself was identified with this sanctuary, the enclosure of Shemesh, Atra Shemesh in Aramaic, as stated also by the legend on its coins. It is nonetheless the case that the main devotional activities and dedications were directed to a triad of deities named with the Aramaic titles Maran, our Lord, Matan, our Lady, and Bar Maren, the son of our lords, whose identity is still object of debate. Moreover, many other gods and goddesses from Mesopotamian, Arab, Syrian, and Greco-Roman traditions were worshipped in the town, and religious was certainly a prominent aspect in the Athenian society. So it comes with no surprise that many sculptures depicting religious subjects, including both images of priests and deities, have been found at the site. Priest, in this case, the image is on the left, and you will also see other 2 images of priests in the following slides, are usually clearly recognizable for their clothes and attributes. They generally wear a high pointed headdress, a knee-length tunic with long sleeves, and a himation worn diagonally around their body. The face can be bearded, O-shaped, depicting probably some of the facial features of the figure. The left hand usually holds a small plate with the incense and the sigilla, while the right hand draws from the container. At least 2 heads belonging to stages of priests were classified and studied during the first HaSSP season, which were also prepared to be reassembled to their body exhibited in one of the halls. As for the male deities that you can see here, I'm sorry, I'm just moving the panel. Many male deities, again, are attested in Hatra Statuary. To mention some of them, of course, we do have Moran, Shamash, and Barmarine, members of the triad, Nebu, the ancient god of wisdom, accompanied by the stylus symbol of writing, Nergal, the god of the underworld with syncretistic features of the classical Heracles, and other minor deities, including iconographic elements from the Greco-Roman and the ancient Mesopotamian tradition, such as the horns on the forehead as a sign of divine nature. During our first season, though, only a few male statues were identified among more than 100 sculptures. A god wearing a mural crown, perhaps a tutelary god of the city, a warrior god that you can see here, and that comes from the North Gate, a beardless god with horns, similar to the relief that is in the Iraq Museum and is probably to be interpreted as Barmarine, this one, with 2 small horns on the forehead. And a figure of Hermes, let's say, kind of a Hermes figure with small wings on the top of his head. These 2, unfortunately, unprovenanced. Okay. Female deities are also frequently represented in both statues and architectural decorations, even though the identification is not always clear. Matan, Our Lady, was the main goddess of the city's pantheon and is represented according to several iconographies, where she's often depicted on a throne wearing a high headdress adorned with jewels, and is sometimes characterized by the presence of a crescent behind her shoulders. Other female deities attested in Hatra Statuary are the ancient Mesopotamian goddess Nanaya, the Arab goddess Alat, frequently portrayed in the guise of Athena, and accompanied by attribute animals such as camels and lions, tutelary deities from the Greco-Roman world like Tuke and Nike, who symbolically represented the protection of the city and the victory, and Aphrodite. We identified several heads of female deities, many of which most likely depict figures of Nike and Tuke, like these 2 on the right. So here you have Tuke with this high mural crown, and she's basically an exact copy of one that was already published by Fuad Safar Mohammed Ali Mustafa. She's again, let's say the other one is from the Great Temenos. This one is again unprovenanced, but it's really interesting because it's basically, they were probably made kind of in series because they are almost identical. And here there is a head of probably of Nike, and she has this typical knotted kind of hairstyle that has been identified as one of the, let's say, most typical elements of the Nike iconography at Atra. But also, we do have actually on the left and in the middle two different probably was the same goddess. We don't know, of course, because it's always very difficult to say. But on the left, you do have this kind of Athena, a lot figure, let's say Athena figures with the helmet. And she's one of the head that we kind of identify and that needs to be restored because she actually belonged to a body that is in another place in the storeroom. So she actually needs restoration. It actually needs restoration and is comparable to this relief from Temple 5th, where we do have this again, Athena Lat among other two female companions. And in the middle, again, we don't know who is actually represented, but on the basis of the comparisons, we could at least kind of hypothesize that that the goddess represented is Alat, with this high conical headdress with jewels and with a veil covering it actually and falling on her shoulders. And problem is we don't know, again, this is in provenance again, and we don't know where this is from. These are two freeze frames of the video recording the destructions at the Mosul Museum that Enrico showed you. And the thing is that if Iraq had a lot of destructions, truly lots of destructions, there is also reconstruction. So in these images, you can see our colleagues, our Iraqi colleagues from the restoration laboratory working with us to try to check the match between two heads of two priests from Temple 14 and their body. So basically we found the heads in the storerooms while their bodies, headless, were in the main halls. So they're actually under restoration right now and under the supervision of Tamer, our restorer. And as I already mentioned, actually, also other two female statues probably ascribed to kind of Athena Lat type and of Nike type were also identified, and as they need to be restored, they are actually like the next step would be to restore those two statues and maybe to be able to exhibit them. The collaboration with the Iraq Museum Restoration Laboratories was particularly fruitful and made it possible to plan the consolidation of numerous fragments and the reassembly of some of the statues, which could thus be included, as I said, in future permanent or temporary exhibitions and shown to the public, enriching the halls of the museum. This is particularly important to us, as the project is also intended as a starting point for a new organization of the statuary exhibited in the halls devoted to Atra, with new panels and didactic materials, which will allow a more comprehensive understanding of the antiquities from the city and increase the awareness of the richness of Hatra's cultural heritage in the local community. Of course, our will is to go back as soon as possible, of course, as soon as the situation will allow us to. And probably it would take at least other 2 seasons to complete our catalogue and to, of course, keep documenting and registering everything, so to have at the end a useful for us, for the scholarly community, and for, of course, the staff of the Iraq Museum and the SPA. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your lecture. We are so proud of this project and view, so thank you again for all this project. For the moment, unfortunately, we don't have questions, so I would like actually to tell you again that you have the possibility to ask for clarification, or if you want to learn more about the project, you just have to comment in this live chat, which is next to the video, and I'm going to read these questions or these comments to our speakers. So in the meantime, I would like to ask you something. I was wondering, what is the most difficult, the hardest part in reassembling these statues?
Enrico, would you tell me?
Start.
As you prefer.
Yes.
It's a question for both of you, actually.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it may seem kind of stupid, but it's not. As like there is kind of a huge physical part. So first of all, the big difficulty is to identify the correct pieces that go together, which again may seem simple, but sometimes it isn't. And of course, I mean, as with pottery, you need to try it on, right? So you do have the head, you do have the bodies, but maybe you're not sure. So maybe, for instance, the fracture is very rough, so it doesn't maybe match like at first sight. So you need to try it on. And I can tell, I mean, they were wonderful, our colleagues in the museum, but it was really, really a tough job to try all of the heads, even on those stages, because of course we needed to try both on both bodies. So it may seem kind of irrelevant, but it isn't. You need like even some also kind of machine that bring you at the right height. And I would say that yes, after the kind of the cataloging part, there is also this honestly physical part, not to mention of course the work that comes after of the restorers.
Sure, and also we have to catalog many fragments that now we don't know still that are in the storerooms, but we have to catalog them and to check them, and also identify them, so to understand how to put one and to check and to try to find matches.
Thank you for your answers. I can imagine these are two aspects difficult for different reasons, but both difficult. There's a question. Good evening, and thank you for presenting this fascinating project. Enrico Marcato, I'm sorry. Were you able to detect any inscriptions on the statues you could examine? Thank you.
Did I?
I can answer. No, we have found some inscription in the hall that are well known to the other visitors and to the curators of the museum, but from the storerooms we didn't check and documentate them.
Yes, like I mean, we really started from basically the heads. So I mean, there is plenty of inscriptions on even on statues, on altars. So, but the point is that in this very kind of peculiar type of evidence we were dealing with is like it's very difficult. I mean, if you do have, let's say, from an architectural decoration, the entire torso, you might have something written below, but just with the head is really uncommon. I mean, as far as I know, at least. So no.
Yes, our first project is focused mainly on heads. So we in the second and third campaign probably we will concentrate on bodies, and if we will have time, also on other kind of objects and findings, always from Hatra. So the idea is to enlarge our project on all probably the findings from the site, but we have to conclude before the sculpture part.
Of course, thank you. A new question. Thank you for the interesting presentation. Are you planning to resume the archaeological investigations in the future?
Well, it's like, of course, it's like a dream that we are not still willing to renounce to, I would say. So actually, yes, is in our definitely in our plans. Is not probably something that is going to happen soon, unfortunately. But yes, it's one of our aims for the future, let's say. Enrico, would you like to add something?
No, it's our hope.
Yeah.
It's our hope as well. Absolutely. Second question from by the same person. How did the staff of the museum and other people react to this project?
Again, would you like to go, Henry?
They are very happy for. Yes, they are very happy of being there, and they help us in every part of the project. They are in contact with us constantly, so I think it's a good collaboration with all the archaeologists and with the Iraq Museum.
I think that the staff reception of our activities, since it was kind of a collective activities with them, was, I mean, I think was really good. I mean, I don't think, I mean, I didn't feel like I was in any possible way unwelcome, quite the contrary. So it was really a pleasure to work with them. And I mean, I really hope that we will continue actually these activities with them.
Great. It's good to know that you created this team, which is a team even if the project at the moment is not going on. But the team is still the team, so you are still going on with this project. Okay, we don't have any more questions, it seems, for the moment. But I would like to ask you something else. Considering the fact that you have a website and different pages on different social medias, I would like to know, in your opinion, of course, how important is to properly communicate the aims of this project?
It's very important, and I would like to thank you because we have some help also from the CAMNES in this sense. And yes, it's a work because during also the expedition, the mission at the museum, we had to also think to this aspect and to communicate and to also involve people in our work. We would like maybe in the future to also have some video at the museum or some also interviews with archaeologists or archaeologists there at the museum in order to have more information also in the working progress of our expedition.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. I think we don't have any more questions. So I would like to thank you once more for your presentation, for your project, and I would like to thank our public as well. So thank you for being with us today. Our next lecture will be next Wednesday, December the 16th at 5 p.m. as usual. The next lecture will be also the last for this first issue of the bulletin. Jason Ura will talk about landscape and empire in ancient Assyria, the Erbil Plan Archaeological Survey. So thank you once more, thank you so much, and see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.